Oh. Anything I say is up for debate. If you disagree with something or you feel like you have evidence against what I'm saying, please say something, because we welcome all points of view. However, be warned, I have done extensive research on this topic for many years. So, I've broken the topic down into like little mini topics. So what I'll do is I'm not going to read the comments while I'm discussing one specific topic, and then when I'm done with that topic, I'll read your comments and see what you guys have had to say about it before I move on to the next one. That way I don't get distracted and get way off tangent, because I do have ADHD and I will totally get way off tangent if I read the comments while I'm going. So, that being said, if you have not done so already and you just stumbled upon this live and you're like, what is this shit talking about? I did, like the last few videos I did, explained a little bit. I have a video that surprisingly went kind of viral for me anyways, about vaccines. And there was a lot of misinformation spread in the comments, so that's why I decided to do this live. I am going to multitask and do my makeup while I'm doing this live, so hopefully that doesn't bother anybody. So, anyways, let's get started. I have notes. I need to make sure I have the right pages of the notes. We're going to start with something somebody said in a comment on a video yesterday about measles and vaccines, and said that, you know, these vaccines are a shame because they prevent diseases that could cure cancer. So when I asked her to elaborate, she had said that her grandmother had cancer, and the doctor told her that if she had not had her measles vaccine when she was younger, that she could contract measles now, and measles would actually cure her cancer. That is false. I don't know if the doctor was lying or if the doctor was just misinformed, which is doubtful. But the girl who told me this looked like she was probably 13 or 14, so I'm pretty sure she was probably misinformed or misunderstood what she was actually told. So here's where the information comes from. There are oncology researchers that are currently trying to genetically modify certain viruses to specifically attack cancerous cells only. They've done this with several different viruses, including some flu strains. They've done it with measles as well, and that's where she got measles from. What they've done is they've genetically modified them, and then hopefully what will happen is that they'll go and infect the cancerous cells, and the cancer cells will die, but the rest of the person will remain perfectly healthy. Now, in one particular case, there are two women that they injected these into. They had one was a bone marrow cancer, which is particularly, which is why measles was chosen to be the virus to attack this, because of the way measles infects the body. So, these women had already undergone lots of chemotherapy and all kinds of other treatments, and this was like their last hope kind of thing. So what they did is they injected these women with 10,000 units of this modified measles. So it's important to remember that too. This is not the measles. It's a genetically modified measles. So contracting measles won't do this. It's not a regular measles. With 10,000 units, which is way more than your body would even have if you were infected with measles. That's enough vaccinations for 10,000 people. 10,000 units these women were injected with, and then they were followed closely for a short period of time afterwards to see how it worked. Immediately, their cancer, the tumors that they had, began to shrink. And woman number one, however, within a couple of weeks of her tumor shrinking, they began to grow again, and the treatment was no longer effective at all. Woman number two, her cancer actually completely disappeared from her body. They found no evidence of cancer whatsoever in any of the exams they did on her and any of the testing that they did. But 9 months after this experiment, her tumors started growing back in all the same places they were before. So it was completely ineffective. It was very promising. That gives us information to how we can treat cancer, but it failed. It was ineffective. Measles, a modified measles virus, was not effective in treating cancer or curing cancer. So, and I don't see anybody arguing about that. So, I'm glad we're all on the same page there. Now, speaking of diseases, well, this isn't a disease. It's a disorder. Whatever. Moving on from that. Autism. Okay, so, autism, a man named Andrew Wakefield published a paper talking about an experiment that he did, a study that he did, that suggested that the MMR vaccine, not all vaccines, specifically the MMR vaccine, is responsible for the increased rates of autism in British children. This paper was published. There was a lot of hype, obviously. But then it was found out there were financial interest. There was a conflict of financial interest in this paper. There were unethical practices done in this study, and there were several procedural errors made in this study, which completely invalidated any findings. If you make errors during the procedure, obviously the findings are then invalid. So, because of all three of these things occurring, his paper was so far off base that he actually had his medical license stripped away. That being said, though, his hypothesis caught some attention. Like, okay, well, is there, even though he messed up this study, let's do it the right way and find out if he was actually onto something. So, hundreds of studies have been done now since then to see if there's a link between autism and the MMR vaccine, as well as autism and any other vaccines. And no link has been found whatsoever. They have actually seen that rates of autism are exactly the same among the vaccinated community as well as the unvaccinated community. The rates are the same, which that alone shows that vaccines don't have any effect on it. And then since that paper came out, in the last 2 years, they have found that autism actually has a genetic component to it. It tends to run in families. And then super recently, they actually found that they have actually witnessed autism developing in a fetus in utero. So long before a needle ever pokes a little baby's thigh, autism is present, even if it's not obvious to us yet. So, vaccines have absolutely nothing to do with autism. It has been proven time and time again by several studies, as well as now we know that it's a genetic and biological thing that happens. It has nothing to do with vaccinations. So, let's see. Amen. He was on to nothing. Yeah, he was on to absolutely nothing. It was a big hunk of crap. Okay. Everybody good so far. I don't see any I don't remember what the word is I'm looking for. I don't see any friction. I don't see anybody having a problem with that. So we're going to move on to the fact that some people worry that vaccines are too much for babies to handle because we do give them a lot of shots. At my daughter's most recent appointment, actually, she had 6 injections given. She had a cold at one of her appointments, so she wasn't able to get them, so she had to play catch up. So she had 6 injections given at once, and it was a total of 9 vaccines that she was getting, 9 different strains. So, here's the thing. A perfectly healthy baby, when they're born, they have enough antibodies in their body to handle 10,000 strains of viruses. They can fight 10,000 strains off at once. That's how many antibodies they have. So, the 9, like for example, for my daughter, the 9 strains she got that one day, that's negligible compared to the 10,000. And then also keep in mind the things your baby's exposed to on a day-to-day basis, especially if they're crawling, if they're mobile at all. Think of all the germs that you've picked up on your shoes when you're walking about and now you've tracked over your floor in your house. Think about everything your kids may have brought home from school. If you have older children, all of the snotty noses they've encountered from all the different houses, all the different viruses, plus playing out on the playground, all the bugs they may have touched or whatever they may have found, then everybody you bump into at the grocery store, like your kid comes into contact with so many viruses and bacteria every single day and their body fights them off most of the time. The amount they receive from vaccination is negligible and you don't really have to worry about them getting too much at once. Now, I have done my children on a traditional vaccine schedule, and I've also done a spaced out schedule. And honestly, the traditional schedule is much easier because it's a lot less appointments to the doctor, and especially at that point, I didn't really know about how many antibodies they had in their body. So now knowing the science behind it, I have no problem them getting that many at once. They're going to be a little uncomfortable, but they're uncomfortable less times. You know, instead of taking them 12 times in their first year to the doctor, you're only taking them 2 or 3 times. So, okay, let's see. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I 100% agree with that, especially after what happened to our son. And, excuse me, our son's not the only case I know of either. I have a friend who has a baby that was born at 26 weeks who caught whooping cough, and she has permanent lung damage done now. She is 6 years old, and she already has permanent lung damage done because she couldn't receive the whooping cough vaccine. Her mom actually had to take her out of school and homeschool her now because a child is going to her school that her mom was able to get around the mandatory vaccinations that we have here in California. And so school is no longer safe for her because she can't be vaccinated, so she now has to be homeschooled. It's really not okay. When I was on Facebook, I was part of many groups of people with children with special needs and children that are immune compromised and have the same genetic disorder as my son or have the same heart condition as my son and various other things. And it's sad how many kids die every year because they can't be vaccinated when everybody who can be should be, because it will help those kids. Like, there are dozens and dozens every year that are hospitalized because of RSV or because of the flu or whooping cough. Now we have measles outbreaks going out, and those kids stand almost zero chance. So when you vaccinate, it's not just for you, it's for other people. It directly affects other people. It's the same reason why you drive under the speed limit, right? So next is natural immunity. So some people claim that natural immunity is better than immunity you get from a vaccine. It's a stronger immunity. Now, that is sometimes true. Keyword being sometimes. It is not always true. Some people will develop stronger immunities from natural immunities, but you have to think of what risk that comes at. If your immunity to measles is stronger by catching measles and fighting it off than by getting the vaccine, well, then maybe I just want to catch it and fight it off, right? Because I'll be more immune to it. Here's the thing, though. There is, based on the MMR vaccine alone, there's a 1 in 1 million chance that you will die from that vaccine, that you will get that vaccine and it will kill you. 1 in 1 million chance. I'm not going to claim nobody's ever died from the vaccine. You won't hear that here. Some people have. But it's a 1 in 1 million chance. Okay, so what's the chance of you dying if you actually contract measles? It's a 1 in 500 chance. So while you may get stronger immunity from it, it's much more likely to kill you than the actual vaccine is. So you're probably better off just getting the vaccine, right? And that's the case with pretty much any of the vaccines. That's an autograph. I can't mess with the autographs my daughter got. Yeah, people are dying, and it's through no fault of their own. It's sad. Thank you for vaccinating your kids. Exactly, I would gladly take that chance too. I would much rather take the chance of dying from a vaccine than dying from the illness. Also, this is a very unpopular opinion, but let's say your child might, like SIDS is a common thing. A child dies from SIDS, and anti-vaxxers jump all over that and start asking, when was the last time they had a vaccination? Your child's vaccine killed them, blah, blah, blah. Well, if my child has a 1 in 1 million chance of dying from a vaccine, and the way that they die is that they go peacefully in their sleep, I think I'd rather have that happen to them than have them contract this disease that's going to make them suffer with extreme pain for weeks, possibly even months before they die, or they end up scarred for life. Sorry, I know a lot of people don't feel the same way, but especially after the way Judah died, there were several times when he was in the hospital when he almost died, and it would have been really quick and painless and peaceful. And I have thought several times that I kind of wish he would have died in the hospital peacefully instead of having to suffer the way that he did. So, now we're going to talk about... That sucks. I have that with chickenpox. I've been vaccinated against chickenpox, and I've still caught chickenpox 4 times and have had shingles. But my body doesn't hold on to immunity the way it should. I have some autoimmune disorders that cause that. Toxins. Some people don't like vaccines because of the toxins that are in them, because they don't want to pump those chemicals into their bodies. First, the amount of toxins, let's pretend that they are super poisonous. The amount of toxins you're getting from a vaccine is like that much? How many times do you feed your kid ketchup in a year? Probably a lot more than that little amount. Okay, your kids get toxins all day, every day. This has toxins. This has toxins. I mean, even this has toxins, okay? You pick and choose, okay? Here's the other thing. There is such a thing as detoxifying. If you are one of those people that is super holistic, and I totally used to be there, I didn't use anything like that. There was nothing conventional in our house at all. Everything was oils and herbs and everything. And I still vaccinated. Because you can get the vaccine, give it like a week for your body to get that immunity, and then you detox. You can do heavy metal detoxes. You can Google, and you can find thousands of ways to help your body detox from a vaccination. And you'll still have the immunity at the end of it. So toxic chemicals really isn't a very convincing reason to not get vaccinated, because your body detoxes naturally, and there's lots of things you can do to help it along. That being said, one of the toxins people have a real problem with is formaldehyde. And the amount of formaldehyde that's in any vaccine you could ever get is actually less than the formaldehyde that's already in your body. Formaldehyde is a byproduct of your body's natural systems. So you're not actually adding anything foreign into your body. You already contain formaldehyde. Mercury is another one. And mercury was actually removed from most vaccines. The couple that it's still in, it just isn't in trace amounts. And it was removed as a precaution during the autism scare, and it's just never been added back in, even though it's been proven to be perfectly safe. Yeah, so that's your bit on toxins. And then think of this as well. The amount that's in any one vaccine is minuscule. So while you don't want to go drink a glass of formaldehyde or mercury, or you don't want to, inject or drink a bunch of aluminum, because that would hurt you, the amount that's in the vaccine is not harmful. Think of it this way. If you drink a glass of water, that's good for your body. But if you were to go sit down and drink 10 gallons of water, you actually would die. You can actually have so much water that you die. Your cells would drown, essentially. So while water is actually toxic in a certain amount, in a small enough amount, it's good for you. The same with the things you're finding in these vaccines that are scaring the crap out of you. Yes, in large amounts, those things are toxic, but in the small amounts you're finding in the vaccine, they aren't. So let's see what it said. Da-da-da. Oh, Mima, that's scary. Yeah, right? I use hairspray almost every day. Dirt, soda, yeah. Everything. Everything has crap in it. They do. I actually use essential oil. Make sure there's nothing embarrassing in here. No. I use essential oils. I always use them first, and then if they're not working fast enough, because they work a little bit slower than the things you get over the counter. I'm not gonna lie, they're a little bit slower, but otherwise they're just as effective. We don't use conventional stuff unless it's absolutely necessary, like if it's an emergency kind of situation. Like, I use peppermint oil to bring my kids' fevers down. If I'm giving them peppermint oil and in like a half hour it's not down, then I'll give them some Tylenol. There's a balance. There's definitely a balance between natural and not, because while natural is great, you have to keep in mind that 100 years ago, a lot more people died a lot more often because they didn't have the medicines we do now. So when you need to use them, you kind of need to swallow your pride and use them. Well, thanks for the love. And see, that's good. See, you still did them. Crap, I have to blow my nose again. Give me a second. I know that's gross, but I have a cold. So, next up, we have the claims that some people have that vaccines just don't work. It's a big conspiracy, and they don't even do anything. Okay. Well, a lot of people will point to, we have a lot less disease than we have nowadays. We're a lot healthier nowadays than we were a couple hundred years ago. And people will say, yeah, but vaccines aren't because of that. It's because we have better hygiene now. And you know what? They're kind of right. We do have a much better hygiene now, and as a result, we are much healthier overall as a species. However, we can look into the 20th century when hygiene was already pretty darn great and see the effects that vaccines have. For example, in 1963, when we started widespread measles vaccinations, at that point there were approximately 400,000 cases of measles a year. Once we implemented that vaccine, that number went down to 25,000 by 1970. So within 7 years, it had dropped that much. Nobody was washing their hands tons more between 1963 and 1970. We already had, plumbing. We weren't dumping our sewage into the streets. Like that, the vaccine did that. Another case is the Hib vaccine, which was 20,000 cases in 1990 when the vaccine was introduced, and by 1993 it was down to 1,500 cases. In China, in the late 70s and early 80s, they had the whooping cough vaccine, and they were really, really, really strict about giving that to everybody, and it dropped down to 1 year. They had less than 300 cases of whooping cough, and then they kind of slacked off on vaccines, and very shortly they had wound up with 8,000 cases of whooping cough. Again, within a few years, there is not a major change in hygiene practices. That is the vaccine doing its job. More proof vaccines do work. In 1900, flu, TB, GI tract bugs, and diphtheria were the top causes of death. All infections that we can vaccinate for now. In 2010, now the top causes of death are heart disease, diabetes, and cancer and accidents. Vaccines work. We're not still dying of those things because we have vaccines now. Infant mortality. In the year 1800, approximately 40% of all children did not live to the age of 5. They didn't make it to age 5. That's about the time we started having better hygiene practices, and by 1950, we had an infant mortality rate of about 20%, so about 20% of infants didn't make it to age 5. That's about a 50% decrease in infant mortality rate. That's awesome. Between 1950 and present day, we have just exponentially increased the amount that we vaccinate, and we've seen that number drop 90%. So now that worldwide, the infant mortality rate, depending on the country, fluctuates between only about 1 and 3% of infants don't make it to 5 years old. That is thanks to vaccines, 100%, nothing else. Let's see. Oh, I missed you too, Alora. I haven't seen you in forever. Let's see. Vaccines don't work. Okay. Some people think that vaccines cause diseases. Oh, thank you for the follow. Because they get their flu shot and then they have a runny nose and a fever for a couple days. So they think the vaccine made me sick. No. The virus does not make your nose run or give you a fever or a cough or anything like that. That's not the virus. That's actually your body making those things happen. Symptoms that you have like that are your body's way of trying to get rid of the virus. Okay? Runny nose is trying to flush it out with mucus. Your fever is trying to burn it up and kill it. Coughing is trying to expel it through a cough. Your body's trying to get the virus out. Okay? That's why different people can have the exact same virus and have different symptoms, because it's their own body's unique response to that virus. Whereas there are some things that everybody's going to get no matter what the virus is. Like, no matter who has a certain virus. Kind of like hand, foot, mouth disease. You get the rash. Everybody gets the rash because that's what the virus actually does. That's not your body's response to the virus. Okay, does that make sense? So when you get your flu shot, for example, and you have a runny nose and a fever, that's your body doing what it's supposed to do when it gets vaccinated. Is it's got a weakened version of the virus in its body, in it now. So now it's going to fight that, which is not much of a fight because it's dead. But that's why you get a runny nose and maybe a slight fever or whatever. It's because your body's doing what it's supposed to do and it's getting that immunity. So it's not actually making you sick. That's just your body doing what it's supposed to do. Oh, thank you, Laura. Hi, Stacy. Okay. Okay, let's talk about allergens and then we'll talk about risks. So, allergens. I've seen lots of people say they can't be vaccinated because they're allergic. Okay, here's the thing. Not all vaccines have the same ingredients. Just because you're allergic to one vaccine doesn't mean you're allergic to the rest. I don't know why you think you're allergic to them. I'm not saying that you're not. I have heard some really bad stories of people that were told by their parents that they were vaccinated or they're allergic to a vaccine or whatever, and then they find out that it's a big wad of crap. So basically, if you are truly allergic to a vaccine, if you've truly had an allergic reaction to a vaccine, I guarantee you, unless you were an infant, you would have memory of it. Because then what will happen is you will be sent to an allergist who will then evaluate each of the ingredients in that vaccine with a skin test to see what exactly it was that you're actually having an allergic reaction to, because there are different vaccines for the same thing. Like there's more than one measles vaccine, and made by different companies, and some of them have slightly different ingredients. So like, let's say you're allergic to the egg protein in a vaccine, they can give you a version that doesn't have egg protein but uses gelatin protein instead. So most of the time, if you've had an allergic reaction, you can still get vaccinated. They'll just figure out what it was you had that reaction to, and then give you one that doesn't have that product in it. Common allergens in vaccines are gelatin, egg protein, yeast, latex, neomycin, and the Mersol. And, yeah. Another thing, though, is that if you have had an actual allergic reaction, but it is something you either really want to be vaccinated against, or your doctor feels like is really important for you to be vaccinated against, then what they'll do is they will give you the vaccine in an allergist's office so that they can immediately treat your allergic reaction so that you aren't in any danger. So it is still possible to be vaccinated if you have allergies to the vaccinations. But just because you had an allergic reaction to one doesn't mean you're allergic to all of them, and they should have tested to find out what you were allergic to specifically, not only so that you can receive other vaccines, but also for your day-to-day life so you can be safe. Because, like, what if it was egg protein you were allergic to? You kind of need to know that, right? For example, my mother-in-law had a flu vaccine a few years ago and had a reaction to it for the first time in her life, and they found out that she was allergic to the egg protein, that's what the problem was. So now she still gets the flu vaccine every year, she just gets a version without the egg protein in it. So, let's see what y'all have to say about that. since doctor went through the vaccine thing, and I stopped her in the middle and said I totally get the vaccine. She was relieved. Yeah, it makes me really sad when the doctors kind of like tense up, like, have you vaccinated? Because our youngest, we actually didn't get her vaccinated against hepatitis at birth, because I felt like she didn't need it. And I was like, she doesn't have to be poked right at birth, then fine. Because the reason they do that is mostly because to protect those babies that are coming from situations where they might contract it. We didn't do it right away, and then we were going to do it at her 6-week checkup, but we had insurance problems, and she didn't end up getting it till she was 6 months old, which was nerve-wracking for us. But so when we took her in and finally had our first appointment with the doctor, and the doctor was like, why did you have these vaccinations? She was really nervous, and I was like, oh no, give her all the shots, please. I don't want to have to worry about her. Give her everything you got. So, yeah, eggs, allergies. Good job, Rachel. Yes, there is. There's a difference. The tissues are over there. I might have to put my nose in soon. But it's still going to be found in lots of things. Well, not lots of things, but it can be found in things, so you need to know if you're allergic to it. That is also why your doctor always asks you at every single appointment if there's been any change to your allergies. Like when they're doing your blood pressure and stuff, they ask any change to medications you're allergic to. So it's very important that you answer that. You let them know any medications and any foods that you're allergic to so that they know how to properly treat you and they don't inject you with anything that might cause you to die. Now, risks. Risks, that's a fun one. Okay. So, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, VAERS, it keeps track of any time anybody's having a reaction to a vaccine. Now, that being said, it keeps track of any time there's been a reaction after a vaccine has been given. Does not mean that reaction was to that vaccine. Once it's been reported, then they investigate and figure out if the vaccine was in fact the cause. But correlation does not equal causation. So just because it happened in the same time frame doesn't mean it actually caused it. For example, if I get the flu shot and then I go get in a car accident and I die, that doesn't mean that the flu shot killed me. Right? So take the numbers with a grain of salt. If you look up how many people have died since 1990 within a week of having a vaccination, so it doesn't mean the vaccine killed them, it means they died within a week of it. The way the numbers pan out, there are hundreds of millions of people vaccinated, and about 1,800 have died since 1990 within a week of being vaccinated. So that comes out to a 1 in 100,000 chance that you will die from a vaccine. Well, die within a week of a vaccine. Doesn't mean the vaccine actually did it. Now, the number of cases that they've investigated and actually found causation is 1 in a million. But we'll go with the 1 in 100,000 just to satisfy those people who may think there's a conspiracy or something like that. 1 in 100,000 chance you will die within a week of having a vaccine. Okay, what's the point of that? Well, if you contract measles, you have a 1 in 500 chance of dying. 1 in 500 or 1 in 100,000. If you contract the flu, you have a 1 in 5,000 chance of dying. 1 in 5,000 or 1 in 100,000. If you contract whooping cough, you have a 1 in 100,000 chance of dying. In this modern day and age where we have vaccines and where vaccinated people still catch whooping cough. Now, we do know that if you catch whooping cough after you've been vaccinated, you have a greater chance of fighting it off. So if we look just at the unvaccinated community, those who contract whooping cough and are not vaccinated against it, they have a 1 in 200 chance of dying. 1 in 200 or 1 in 100,000. Polio, you have a 1 in 200 chance of being paralyzed from polio. And then 1 in 10 of those that are paralyzed die because the paralyzation travels into their muscles and they need to breathe and they suffocate. So, while there are reactions that happen to vaccines, and while some people do die after having vaccines, the odds, if you look at just the numbers, you are actually much better off if you get vaccinated. Your kids have a much better chance at a long and healthy life, and not only that, but then they're not going to spread the disease to people who can't be vaccinated as much as they may want to. Because at the end of the day, the reason for vaccinating is because it's not just about you, it's for everybody. The same reason why you drive your car a certain speed. I would really like to drive 120 miles per hour because I want to get there. But I'm putting other people in danger if I do that. So I don't. I drive the speed limit to keep everybody safe. The same with drugs. I mean, if you want to talk about like cocaine or methamphetamines, people could say it's my body. I can put whatever I want into my body. The government can't tell me what I can and can't do. I see your logic there, but if you are hyped up on PCP, you're probably going to hurt somebody. You're going to do something really dangerous and probably hurt somebody. That's why it's illegal. Not because we want to tell you what you can and can't do with your body, but because we want to keep everybody safe. So that's one reason why there's a big push for mandatory vaccinations, because it's not just about you, it's about everybody. And this is one situation where your decision affects every single person you will ever come into contact with for the rest of your life. So it doesn't just affect you. If it only affected you, then by all means, go ahead and do it. I don't care. Do whatever you want to do. But it doesn't just affect you. It affects everybody. That's why there's a push for mandatory vaccinations, because your decisions are going to affect me. Somebody's decision did affect me and killed my son. That's why it's really important. And dozens, if not possibly hundreds of parents in America alone every year lose their children because their child could not be vaccinated. Whether they were born with a congenital condition and are immune deficient because of that, or they're undergoing cancer treatment. There are adults that undergo cancer treatment that are immune compromised and catch diseases and can't fight them off because people choose to not vaccinate. There are things like whooping cough and measles that are coming back that we had almost completely eradicated because people aren't vaccinating, and it's putting people's lives in jeopardy and people are dying. If we go to a world where we don't have vaccinations, we're not vaccinating, think about what the world looked like 200 years ago. Do you want a 40% chance that your child won't make it to age 5? Because that's what it'll come to if we're not vaccinating anymore. People are going to die. A lot of people are going to die. Both the unhealthy and the ones that should be healthy if they had had their vaccinations. Whoa! Oh, that sucks. When kids have allergies, it's so rough. Hey, Jasmine. Hi, stupid. Hi? I don't know if that's supposed to be offensive or not, but I really don't care. Yes, it's to protect them. Oh! Are you talking about whooping cough? Ever since I caught it, I have a hard time. Anytime I get a cough, it's bad. I have a hard time. It's not as bad as I think it would be if I had caught it when I was younger, though. No one here stupid. Oh, I know who that is. Don't trip. I'm just gonna kick her out. Actually, I'm not gonna kick her out because there's good information here. I'm just gonna mute her. Actually, give me 1 second. Da 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 da. Okay. Okay. See, but that's the thing, Apple Me. My kids have never played with other kids that don't vaccinate, especially when Judah was here. I stayed away from anybody that didn't have vaccinations. Nobody was allowed to come to our house or see us at all if they weren't vaccinated, since he couldn't be and I didn't know what they'd be carrying. However, the only possible way he got this was because of a trip I took to the grocery store and got groceries, and I got infected and I brought it home. So while you could just like live in a bubble, we did live in a bubble that was covered in, like, you know, the hand sanitizer pumps that are at the grocery stores and the bathrooms or at the hospital? We had those literal pumps on our doors, the automatic ones. You stick your hand under and it pumps it out. We had those all over our house. And Clorox wipes, and we wore masks out in public, and he still caught whooping cough. So you can live in a bubble, but if people choose not to vaccinate, it still endangers those who are immune compromised. Yeah, they really don't. I feel like too many people just hear misinformation on Facebook or whatever and don't check the sources. And honestly, though, I think most of those people, not all of them, most of them are afraid. They're afraid they're going to put the shot on their child and their child's going to die. And that is perfectly reasonable for them to be afraid. I get a little nervous every time my kids go for a vaccination because I know there is that very small chance they could have some sort of reaction to it. However, I also know the numbers, and I know that there's more of a chance that they will get sick from those diseases, so I'm going to take the lesser chance. I mean, they're less likely to get hurt if I give them the vaccine. So while I'm a little nervous, I know I'm giving them the best odds. And unfortunately, not a lot of people are educated about it, and that's why I try to talk about it as much as I can. So people can, because I believe that if you know better, you do better. Oh my goodness, that's scary. And they all have older siblings. Ugh. Why? Because you got it when you were pregnant? I think I remember you asking about that. I can't see pictures, so it's hard for me to remember names, but... Ugh. Yeah, see, that is scary. Yeah, we had a lady that went to a sporting event with measles, and she did not know she was infected with measles, and she came into contact with hundreds, if not thousands of people. So I have not looked up how many cases there are here locally, because I don't want to know. That's just, I made extra sure that we were all up to date, and we wash our hands liberally. I keep hand sanitizer with us everywhere. It's just no bueno. Yeah, see, if you get it while you're pregnant, that's fine. That's your own personal choice. I don't know why people would rag on you for that. I did not get it. That's just because I couldn't find enough evidence to just make me comfortable with getting it, because previously it was said it was not safe to get while pregnant. So I just wanted more evidence before I got it. However, literally the moment I woke up after she was born, because I had to be put under for C-section, literally the moment I woke up, I was like, hey, I need my Tdap, because I didn't get it while I was pregnant, so I need you to give it to me now. And I got it the very next day. So, and then she got the antibodies through my milk. So, either way is fine. I'm going to go stop my screen record now, and then I'll be right back.